So Chapter 6 is the chapter on political geography. There will be two parts to this video, and this week is due at the end of week 6, so you have the potential to get this done a little early and kind of be a week ahead for Thanksgiving break if that's your pleasure. Political geography is really about power. I love this quote. Power and ever-changing maps, revealing the struggle over borders, space, and authority. And that's really kind of what we do with political geography. The definition is just the political organization of the planet, kind of a new term that you may hear in news reports. I've heard this often in television shows, is the idea of geopolitics. And this is the study of how geography, both the political or the physical and the human geography, impact decision making and impact border decisions and relationships. And it's a way to analyze foreign policy, not just to understand what's happened, but also to predict what countries are going to do. So at the base of political geography are the terms of state and sovereignty. When we think about a state, in the U.S., we think about that as sub-political regions sub-functional regions within the whole United States. But state is typically mean an independent political unit. So France is a state. Finland is a state, the United States is a state, Canada is a state. And what makes us independent is this idea of sovereignty. We have control over what goes on inside our country, how we want to run our money, how we want to treat our citizens. That is independent from other states. However, a lot of the conflicts that we're having right now, think about Syria, are because we don't want to permit some of the human rights abuses that are happening, or we don't want to permit undercutting selling oil. So we have this idea of sovereignty, but it's not really 100%. And this, when we're talking about states, we're talking about functional regions. These areas were developed to serve a purpose. They have defined borders. They have a central node, usually a capital city. And so we can look at a political map of the world, and each of these are states or independent countries. So one thing that helps understand the operation of states is to look at the size, the shape, and their relative location. So when we look at large states, they have many advantages over very small states. A country like Russia has huge climate variation between the southern borders and the northern borders. They have very different soils. That means that they can grow a multitude of types of crops. They have many resources, mineral resources, other kinds of things across this huge expanse that they have access to. One of the disadvantages is it's really expensive to run railroad lines and road lines across a country this large. It's hard to manage people when they're this spread out. And also, usually with a large country, you may have many different ethnic groups that may speak regional dialects, may speak different languages, may have different ideologies, and these could be a disruptive influence within a country. So with a large country, you have some really good things, but you also have some negatives. Small countries are easy to manage. You can get from one side of the country to the other in just a matter of minutes. Typically you'll have one ethnic group in a small country, so there's less political controversy perhaps. So they're easier to defend. But again, you don't have as many resources. If you have a crop failure in Monaco, you're going to have to go elsewhere to get food. So that's just looking at general size. We can also look at shapes of countries. And so when you look at a country, for instance, like Chile that's elongated, or a country like the Philippines that's fragmented, these sort of act the same as a large country. It's a long way from northern Chile to southern Chile. You have many climate areas, so you have a lot of resources for access, but you also have many different ethnicities up along the area. You could have a very compact country. Again, this is very much kind of looking at small size of a country. You could have a country that is what's considered corrupted, where a portion or a long extent of your country transverses an area. So in Namibia, you can see this little arm of Namibia pointing off to the east, and Thailand is another country that's corrupted. In some ways, this gives them access to other resources, but they're also hard to defend. So there's pluses and minuses with that. Here's elongated countries that look like more of the physically large countries. You can have exclaves. Kaliningrad is an example of an exclave. It's part of Russian sovereignty. However, it is separated from the mainland of Russia by several countries. And this gives Russia access to important ports, but it also separates its country by very different ethnicities, languages, religions. And so one of the things with an exclave is that Kaliningrad becomes more like its neighbors and less like the mother country. And that follows Tobler's first law of geography that says near things are more alike than things that are far away. So basically, Kaliningrad is more like Lithuania than it is Germany and perhaps even Russia. So there's a problem with exclaves, but there's also a benefit. Enclaves mean a country that is completely surrounded by another country. So Lesotho is an enclave. It's completely surrounded by South Africa, or South Africa is perforated by Lesotho. And this means that if you want to get from the southeastern part of South Africa, you have to go around the country of Lesotho unless you have good border relationships. Maybe there's different travel rules. So this all has implications on how countries are governed and how they're managed. The relative location is another important aspect. While size and shape can affect the development of a country, if a country is landlocked, for example, then it doesn't have access to shipping. If there's no rivers through it, it doesn't have access to irrigation. So the resources where a country is has a lot to do with its benefits. In the 20s, the Middle East was considered kind of a desert and not a lot of value. And currently, it's one of the highest valued areas in the world right now. Okay. So when you look at or watch the video this week from the TED Talk from Parang Kahan, he talks about the current ways that we acquire territory. Now, historically, we've acquired territory by purchasing it. Like in the United States with the Louisiana Purchase, we get territory by just taking it during a war. We get territory by someone else giving it to us in a treaty. He makes the point that in 1940 there were only 100 countries in the world, and after World War II and the end of colonization or the decolonizing of the world, 50 new countries were added. At the end of the Cold War, more countries developed as the large Soviet bloc broke apart. So today there's, I think he says 200 countries. Some of the data I have has 207 countries. So a lot more political entities, a lot more areas to treaty with, to trade with, to work out issues with. So here's an example. Another example of acquiring territory is just creating it. In the Netherlands, the land has been reclaimed with polders, with windmills that pump out the water. Seawalls are being developed. This is happening in San Francisco as well, or San Diego, San Francisco, where people are trying to claim the entire marina district by filling in the land and creating more land. I love this one in the Middle East, just creating land for more territory. So when we create land, or when we trade land or colonize, this idea of boundaries and borders, these are the hallmark of functional regions. So there's physical borders that occur. There's also geometric borders, and then there's cultural borders. So let's take a look at each of these. Here's a physical border where the boundary between France and Spain follows this physical mountain range. So the Pyrenees Mountains created this boundary, and the countries that has developed into a political boundary. These are also just great barriers to diffusion. So big deserts, oceans, all of those are really natural boundaries. Rivers can be natural boundaries. But one of the problems with the rivers is they don't stay put. So we had a boundary between Mexico and the United States along the Rio Grande, but the Rio Grande has migrated. So does the land follow the river or not? So there's been 114, probably now 124-year conflict over this region of the world and the resource that's in it, the water. So in '68, the water was diverted to a concrete channel. And that helped maintain the physical boundary of the water, but it's a critical commodity. The other boundary are cultural boundaries. So you can draw formal geographic regions or lines around ethnic groups that have some cohesiveness, and from these boundaries or cultural lines can be developed, functional regions can be developed. And this can also be done to the detriment of people. So after World War II, many of these smaller countries were relegated to one large area, and so ethnic groups were split. Non-like ethnic groups were put together in one country and tried to be managed as if they were one. So looking at these cultural boundaries can be really important in developing political lines. And then the last type of boundary to think about are the geometric boundaries. So typically, geometric boundaries are really straight. People draw them on the Earth's surface to indicate agreed upon divisions. And then we also have vertical boundaries. So we have airspace that people aren't supposed to fly below or above. And one of the problems then with boundaries is that political boundaries are artificial, and that resources and humans, cultural groups, can also straddle those boundaries. So here's a nice example of the Ramallah oil field that flowed in Iraq and also in Kuwait. And part of the basis for the Gulf War was that Kuwait was drilling what's called slant drilling into Iraq to pull off oil. So really they were going into the political boundaries, the under earth boundaries of another country. And then if that's not enough, we want to claim the edges of countries. So there are many contracts and treaties that identify which are areas of the world that belong to different countries. So here in the dark blue are upwelling areas of good nutrient fishing regions. And so the exclusive economic zones, or EEZs, extended the political rights of countries, of sovereign countries, 200 miles to control fishing and mining and oil rights. So that's the first part. We'll start with part 2 in the second video.